Awesome. Well, welcome, Jeff, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Angie. Thanks for the nice introduction. So yeah, we're here today to talk about winter weather as we head into the winter season and our plow season. Um, we're going to talk about common issues that you guys face out there: plowing, parking lots, sanding, salting, shoveling, snow blowing, and so on. So um, we'll just go on to the next slide and start. Um, So obviously, it's really important in any job, from a safety perspective, to know what's coming down the pike. In your business, snow removal, you need to know when that next storm is going to hit. And the temptation is to go out there, on the weekend and go ice fishing with your buddies, or skiing, or snowmobiling, or whatever it is you do. But if you've got to be behind a plow at 3 a.m. Monday morning, you really need to think about getting a good night's sleep. And the only way you're going to know that is to pay attention to the weather and what's coming down the pike, so to speak. Um, and when that does happen, you got to plan for the worst conditions. I suggest that you bring a second set of clothes to work any day of the week, any time of year, because if you get wet, you need dry clothes. If you spill chemicals or diesel fuel or gasoline on those clothes, you need a second set to change into. I have this expression. I didn't create it, but you'll hear me say it all the time. If you leave late for work, if you've got to be there at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 7 a.m. and you've got a half an hour ride and you leave with only 20 minutes to get there, you are going to be late. So leave with plenty of time. Um, give yourself a cushion, especially if you're responding to get a plow truck or something like that in a snow event. It's going to take longer than a clear dry day. um, it's a good practice to inspect your truck and equipment before the storm hits. So if you finish up work on Friday and a storm is going to hit Monday, do a good job on that inspection, making sure everything's ready, the fluids are topped off, the wipers work, the sander works. Go through it really well while you've got that time before the storm, because nothing's worse than being on the side of 106 or whatever. I'm drawing a blank on some of the roads up in your area with a broken down truck and it's snowing and it's cold, and it's 4 a.m. in the morning or 5 p.m. or whatever time it is. So do the
Jeff,
best you can. Go ahead.
yeah, can I add to that real quick?
Sure.
This should go for your personal vehicle as well. Making sure that you have good tires on your vehicle to get in. Oftentimes, not often, but we've had a few occasions where employees have called us. I can't get out of my driveway. I'm on the side of the road. I can't get unstuck. I'm not going to be able to make it in. So please make sure that you really do have good tires, good windshield wipers, that you have good visibility, your headlights are in functioning order, and that like the headlight lens isn't glazed over in some way, whether with frost or just it's an old vehicle and the lens is pitted. There are kits that you can buy to buff out lenses to make it so the light can come through better. It's really important that your personal vehicle is in full functioning abilities or whatever to get into work on time.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, because that's the vehicle you probably spend a lot of time in too, and you're maybe transporting yourself, obviously, and your family. So you want that vehicle to be in good shape. Right. I'm ready for the next slide if you are. So in winter driving, we're trying to maintain control of the vehicle, just like any other time of the year. Um, but in that top right picture, if you're driving in that type of weather, you can see most of us can see the speed limit sign on the slide. It says 50 miles an hour. There's no way you can drive 50 miles an hour down that road in that condition. You can see the truck on the side it's a four-wheel drive truck. And they lost control. They were what we call driving too fast for conditions. You're going to have to drive less than the posted speed limit on many of these roads when they're covered in snow, or the snow is starting to pile up. Um, we've talked about this in the past, but following distance is a really important factor in any time of day, any type of weather. And we really want 4 seconds when the conditions are at their best. And every time there's an additional problem out there, whether it be too much sun, not enough sun, raining, starting to snow, we're going to add additional seconds to that 4-second following distance. And what this allows you to do is it gives you time and space to react if the vehicles in front of you start to lose control. So again, looking at this picture on the slide, the top picture, you're driving down this road and the vehicles in front of you start to skid all over the place. And you can see some are pointed in the wrong direction. If you're following a vehicle with 2 or 3 second following distance and they lose control, you're right there in the thick of the mess. You've got no time and space to react. You don't have any time or space to stop. But if you're 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds back, you've doubled that distance. It makes a big deal. And the simple way to calculate that, in case people are forgotten, if I'm driving down again using that top picture, and the vehicle in front of me passes that 50-mile-an-hour sign, I'm going to count 1001, 1002, and I'm going to go up. I want to not pass that sign until I reach 7 or 8 seconds, in a snowy condition. If it's a clear, dry day, I want to pass that sign at like 4 seconds, and so on. So and again, moving down on the slide, stopping in snow and ice, we gotta slow down slowly. It sounds kind of odd to say that. We can't hit the brakes hard and expect traction. There might be times when we're negotiating roads and coming up to stop signs where there's so limited traction that we kind of keep the vehicle just creeping along at like a mile an hour, and we might not exactly come to a complete stop, but we're just creeping and crawling along here to maintain traction. And again, we want to start off nice and easy. If you're spinning your tires or stomping on the gas, you're creating too much torque and you're just making ice underneath the tires. Four-wheel drive or not, you can do that quite easily. So we want to be very deliberate in our actions with the steering wheel, braking, and starting. So I'm all set for the next slide. So read the road for the hazard. You guys work in the same areas over and over again. Pay attention to the conditions now before the snow hits. What roads are crowned or pitched the wrong way. You get into a corner and the road is pitched to the right or crowned to the right. So the inclination in an icy or snowy event is that you're more inclined to slide off that road to the right because the road's not going to keep you on it. If you're driving in a snowstorm and you start to see the pavement getting shiny in your headlights, that's an indication that it's starting to become icy. And the snow may actually give you more traction than the blacktop road with that shiny, sheen to it. So you might, put your tires in the snow for a little while. There's an end to that. When you get 8 inches of puffy, or slushy snow, you're not going to get as much traction. You're going to have to reduce your speed in both conditions. When the snow becomes hard packed, very, very hard packed and shiny, again, the snow is what's providing the traction. That's why they're called snow tires. Snow tires grip snow-covered roads. They don't really grip pavement roads. They do an adequate job of that, but they're designed to grab the snow with all those sipes and studs and whatever are part of it. So sometimes hard packed snow can give you traction, and other times it's limited. But we're still gonna adjust our speed accordingly by slowing down. And we covered if it's shiny. Let's see. So yeah, again, hard packed snow, there's all different kinds of conditions of snow. They say that, the native population of Alaska, that they have something like 85 words for snow, the types of snow. I think maybe we have 10 down here. But there's each type of snowstorm provides different traction, different areas where it's slippery. When it's slushy, the vehicle wants to hydroplane. When it's crunchy, hard, icy snow, you do get some traction if you drive slowly, but if you hit the gas or hit the brakes hard, you could skid. So the more you drive, the more you become experienced with recognizing the different types of snow and ice conditions, and The simple solutions are slowing down and increasing the following distance. I'm all set for the next one. Visibility. I drive a lot. I've driven in a lot of snowstorms. I find that I keep my defrost on. I'm always adjusting the rate of the fan and the heat. And ideally, you get that windshield so warm that sometimes you don't even need the wipers. The snow just kind of flies over it and doesn't hit. There's nothing worse than when the wipers start to ice up and not clear. And what I do then is I put my visors down, and it kind of keeps the heat piling up against the window. So when the wipers do come up, the wipers are getting some radiant heat through the windshield, and the wipers do start to melt. Um, you do need to clear off all the snow off the hood of the trucks. Anywhere where snow piles up, we have that new law in New Hampshire, Jessica's Law. The fines are $250 to $500 for the first offense. It's $1,000 for the second offense. This picture of this car, that's just way too much snow on that car. They have zero visibility out the back. If you're following a car like that, they have no idea you're behind them. If you're in front of a car like that, and the front of the car has snow on the windshield, again, they're not going to get a good view of you. They can't see you. And that snow is weight too, and it's going to affect how that vehicle brakes and corners and handles the icy conditions of the road. So, keep your defroster on. It's okay to crack the window because you guys are spending a lot of time in these vehicles. Those trucks can get really warm and hot in there. So crack the window, get some moisture in there and some cool air, keep you a little bit more alert and awake. I want to remind you that after a snowstorm, that especially one where the snow clings to the wires and the trees, you can get a lot of post-storm glare when the sun comes up, and there's so much reflective light from the white snow that you can lose vehicles. You can't see them in your mirrors because it just, there's so much light. The road becomes like a black hole, and darker cars disappear in it. And sometimes you can't see traffic lights, or you just can't see anything because there's so much sun. So just, again, you're reducing your speed, increasing your following distance, and driving accordingly. Good for the next one. So here's Jessica's Law, kind of a fun picture of somebody, driving with way too much snow on their vehicle. But those are the fines. It's not the kind of image we want to present out there, driving around with, that amount of snow or any amount of snow on our vehicles.
Jeff, can I bring up one thing also in this picture? And I
Absolutely.
just noticed it.
Yeah.
License plates being covered with snow. I've seen a couple times. I've been out during a storm, or I'm pulling into the office area and I'm seeing a truck. Back license plates or even front license plates are covered in snow and they're not readable. You have to make sure your license plates are cleared off before you get on the roadway.
Good point. So in the event that you have been driving too fast in snow and the vehicle starts to skid, it's the first indicator. Like I said, you're driving too fast for conditions. And those conditions can be the weight of your truck, light, empty with sand or salt, tires are worn, or your own vehicle, or even the condition of the roadway. It's slick and slippery. And a lot of times I'll hear from drivers after they've been involved in a winter collision. They'll say, well, I was, the speed limit was 45, but I had four-wheel drive and I was doing really well, and then I went around a corner and there was black ice. There was nothing I could do. And that's a misleading statement. The driver could have slowed down, should have slowed down. We never know when black ice is going to be there. We never know when the snow conditions are going to go from providing traction to providing no traction. So we have to constantly be watching our speed and slowing down and looking at the vehicles in front of us. Are they skidding? Are they losing control? Or look on the road for skid marks from vehicles. Those are all tips and indicators that there's slick conditions under your tires. but you always have to assume that there could be black ice or pack ice underneath the powdery snow. So in the event that you are involved in a skid, you want to look where you want the vehicle to go. If you find yourself looking at the tree or the telephone pole or the side of the road because that's where the vehicle's going, and you don't look back into the lane of travel you want to be in, you will end up crashing into what you're looking at. It's really weird. It's the way the human brain and body work. But if you look where you want to go, your hands will start turning the steering wheel and get you there. The tendency is to stare at what you might hit and then hit the brake and do nothing, and then you will hit what you're looking at. So um, it's easy to say, try not to oversteer, try to steer as little as possible when you start to skid. Immediately let off the gas and try not to go to the brake. This provides your wheels allows your wheels to get some traction. The vehicle will slow down. It'll feel like a long time before that happens because you're in a skid. But if you give the car a few seconds to slow down naturally by just taking your foot off the gas, sometimes that's all it takes to get that traction back. The two vehicles I have pictured on the slide, they're obviously front wheel drive vehicles. They do skid a little bit differently than a rear wheel drive vehicle, but you still want to let off the gas, steer as little as possible, and give your vehicle some time to recover before you hit the brake or continue to steer. So, Angie, do you have any comments? There were some comments coming
Yep,
up here.
I do. So one, Mark Cody, for those of you who don't know Mark Cody, he is our cross insurance broker. Sorry, Jeff is actually from Cross Insurance as well, not from Acadia. The two of them work very closely together and I confuse them sometimes. But Mark Cody mentioned the incident that happened in Londonderry with the box truck. And that 22-year-old was seriously injured because ice came off the top of the box truck and struck the car that he was in, went through the windshield, injuring him.
Wow.
So just even in this little storm that we had, not little, but we didn't get a ton of snow, but it was so wet and heavy that it created sheets of ice on top of vehicles. And it's really important that, you may not be able to see the top of a box truck, but that doesn't mean there's nothing up there. I have talked to Andrew and Mark about box trucks and how we're going to get them cleaned off. So hopefully we'll have some updates there soon. And just some of our larger trucks that are really tall. I don't know if we have they have box truck cleaners specifically. I'm not sure if we have anything like that, but we'll look into it and make sure that we have the right tools for you to use to get these trucks cleaned off safely. And then the other one of the new employees actually mentioned not using an e-brake when you're sliding.
True. You should stay off the e-brake. We're not Hollywood stunt people. If you want to go out and play in the parking lot in your own vehicle somewhere and you've got an e-brake, it's not good for your car. And it's really not a viable option in maintaining control. We're trying to be defensive drivers here, and that's a driver who drives to save lives, time, and money in spite of the actions and conditions around them. And in this case, we're talking about winter driving conditions. And we're also talking about reasonable actions to take to maintain control of the vehicle. And in a court of law, no jury of your peers is going to consider grabbing the e-brake to control a skid or create a skid to get out of a bad condition as a reasonable action. A reasonable action is slowing down and maintaining your vehicle, getting snow tires, that kind of thing. And actually, real quick, back to Mark's comment about the ice coming off the box truck. I keep talking about the following distance. Just because the road is clear and dry, it could be 2 days after the storm, and you want to use a 4-second following distance or less, which you shouldn't do. You're following a box truck down 106 or along the bypass around Laconia, and you start to see little bits come off that truck. Well, there was your warning sign to back way away from that truck, because it could be a sheet of ice on the next frost heave, or as that truck starts to get up to 55 miles an hour and the wind starts to suck that ice off the top of that box truck. If you're back 8 seconds, you're not going to be hit by it, or you're going to have that time and space to see it fly up in the air and brake accordingly.
Jeff, when it comes to slowing down in these types of conditions, what do you recommend with downshifting, both in a standard and an automatic vehicle?
Yeah, they're both good methods. You can't dump the in a standard. If you downshift, that's great, but you've got to let the clutch out slowly, because again, you don't want to change that torque so much that you lose traction in letting that clutch out. But I've had standards before. I find them much easier to control in snow than an automatic. In fact, if you are in a standard and the back end of your vehicle starts to fishtail, if you push that clutch in, the fishtailing is over almost instantly, because it separates the drive and the torque to those rear wheels, and they instantaneously stop spinning. And then you slowly let the clutch back out after you've kind of steered into the skid. Um, Automatics, same thing. You want to quotes downshift slowly. You don't want to go from drive to first quickly. You want to allow the vehicle to do it do it slowly, and really think about it. If you're going down a really steep hill, you get into third at the top of the hill. Don't wait till you're at the steepest part and try to go from drive to third to second, because you're going to have too much momentum and you're going to be creating too much torque when you do those downshifts, that you may lose traction on the rear wheels. I don't know if that clarifies it for some people, but it is a good way to stay off the brakes.
Yep, perfect.
Next slide. So a couple of slides have indicated that traction is provided by the road. So, dry weather, the dry road provides the traction. Our tires have a very small part in this process. And we've all driven on dry roads with tires that are right at the wear bars. We still have traction because the road is providing the traction. If you think of those same tires, if we're in a rain event, those tires lose traction because the road is covered by water. So water is essentially providing the traction or lack of traction. So the same applies for snow. And that's why they're called snow tires. They grip snow. And if we look at these slides, I tried to find 4 different conditions. There's more. There's literally, in one storm, you can have 4 or 5 different conditions within miles of each other. So if we start in the upper left photo, that's kind of a slushy snow type of event, much like what we had in this first storm, down around Concord, Manchester area. The tires will, if you've got good tires, they'll push the slush out of the way at certain speeds. But as you increase your speeds, that your vehicle tends to kind of hydroplane up on the slush and snow, and you lose traction. That photo is the vehicles are following way too close. That's less than 2 seconds. That's a following distance that's not even really shouldn't be allowed on a clear, dry day. If we go down to the bottom left photo, that's a picture of what I call like the beginning of the storm. The snow is all light and fluffy and it blows all around as the vehicles pass through it. And then eventually the snow starts to kind of pile up on the yellow line and towards the white line. And then in the middle of your own lane, you get kind of these piles of snow. And this is where you can see sometimes where you get the 2 pavement grooves start to develop. And when those pavement grooves start to get shiny, I often put my tires in the snow piles if they're not very high. If they're 1 or 2 inches high, I tend to get more traction in them than I do on the icy, grooves that are been made. You go back and forth and drive where your vehicle has the most traction. The upper right photo with the moose in it, that's the moose was just part of the extra of the photo. But what I was trying to show there is that road has got pavement and then what I call like pack ice, where the cars have packed it into the just packed it down to ice. And the worst part about that type of road is you can go from, wet pavement, and then all of a sudden you're on uneven pack ice where your suspension starts to bounce, and your tires are not making good contact with the ice. And if you're going too fast on a corner or downhill and you hit that and you try to brake, you may lose traction if you're going, again, if you're going too fast. Um, and then the bottom right photo is a little bit further on into the storm. It's showing us that the grooves were there, but they're starting to fill in with snow. And this is where that whole black ice thing starts again, because while the storm's been building, the cars have been packing down that snow and making that shiny surface of black ice, and now it's getting covered with snow. So again, if you drive too fast in these conditions, you've got to expect black ice on any of these corners. Again, those two vehicles in the bottom right, they're following way too closely. They shouldn't even be in the same picture frame. They should give themselves that much separation. There's also a lot of snow on that station wagon too. So that's all I have on that one. I don't know if you want to add anything to it, Angie.
No, I was going to mention the two cars being way too close, and you covered it, so that's good. One thing I will note though, in that bottom left-hand one, where it's kind of just a dusting of snow going across the road, those conditions can be just as dangerous because you can't see what's underneath it because the wind drifts are just blocking what the pavement actually looks like.
Point. So again, we bring kind of coming around to this point several times, but if we look at this slide, where is the road providing traction? And the entire road is covered with snow. So the snow is our only source of traction. And to me, this storm looks kind of like a wettish storm. There's obviously been some previous storms before it. So sometimes, again, riding out of the grooves, you might find some crunchy, hard snow that actually gives you some traction. This vehicle was going too fast, probably kind of planed up on the snow. They didn't steer out of the skid. You can tell by the direction of the tires. So you've got to search for that traction slowly. All right, if we look at this slide, it'd be so much more fun in person because we could have people answer the question instead of me, but that is just ice. So that road, that clear, semi-clear, icy colored road, unless you've got studded snow tires, and even studded snow tires are going to give you limited traction. If I was driving on that road, I would be going incredibly slow, 5 miles an hour, and I would probably have my right tires in the crunchy snow on the farthest right of the road and just be creeping along. If I had a truck with a sander, I would be going, if I could, if it wasn't a main road, if it was one of your accounts that has a long driveway or something, I would be backing down, sanding my way down into that, or up that driveway, however direction you want to call it, so that my own sand is providing my vehicle traction. So probably the worst condition ever to drive in is what we're looking at this picture right here. So this storm, again, it's kind of early on in the storm. If you look at this picture, what is missing from the side of the road? And I'll answer my own question. There's no snowbanks. Snowbanks are great. When we get a 2 foot high or 1 foot high snowbank, they really stop a lot of crashes because they catch the car and they slow it down, and they prevent it from, hopefully, from going further or rolling over like this vehicle did. To me, it looks like there's some ice underneath where the cars have been driving, and there's some fresh snow on top of it. So again, I'd be looking for the deepest snow, kind of like that red pickup truck. The tires are not in the grooves by the previous vehicles. It's in the deeper snow where he might be getting some traction. This is a a picture of a truck that actually was on the internet. It was a fatal crash. The driver was going from one account, the same account, but two different locations in a snowstorm, traveling on a road very similar to like 106 or Route 28. Two-lane road, no divider, and had just filled up the sander. The sander was full of sand. He had no uh, like time constraints, meaning he wasn't under the gun to be done by a certain time, be at a certain building at a certain time. So there was really no reason for the speed he was traveling. Lost control of the vehicle, rolled it over, or drove it down an embankment. It doesn't really look like it rolled over, but succumbed to his injuries. You can see it's an F-250. It's a good sized truck. It's not an older unit, but basically just driving too fast for conditions. And again, in this photo, it's snowing. It's a plow truck. It's loaded with weight. Um, it's going to react differently. You've got, I don't know how many 100 pounds hanging over the front of it that changes the suspension and the braking and the steering. You've got I don't know how many thousands of pounds of sand in the back. Um,
So one thing I want to point out with a picture, and I don't know if it's clear and if you guys can actually see it, it looks as though a piece of the sander or a part of the sander came through the back of the back windshield through the front windshield. It is sitting on the driver's seat, which I'm guessing is what caused the death.
yeah, that there was some conversation about that that part of the load and the equipment did come through the cab, injuring the person.
Ugh, that's
So
awful.
I don't know what precautions you can take. I don't know if you use those kinds of covers, but ratchet strapping them down or bolting them down would be a plus. So.
Okay, so next one.
All right, so we got three different situations going here. If we look, we're gonna kind of look at the top two photos, and like the photo on the left, I kind of liken it to the TV ads. If you watch TV recently, and they, Ford or Ram will be on, and they show their plow, like one of their trucks plowing up this mountain, and it looks like the guy's doing like 65 miles an hour, and they're like, our trucks can go through anything, and that may be true or not true, I don't know. But if you look at this driver on the left, it's a windy day. The snow is really powdery, dry, powdery snow. So if this is a Hannaford parking lot or an apartment complex or one of your accounts that you're plowing, and this is the kind of day you have, how much visibility does that driver have? The answer is very little right now. In that photo, he or she has very little visibility. They need to slow down, and that may make it more difficult to push the snow. I get that, but if you run over the little kid making a snowman on the side of the apartment complex or whatever, or you hit someone's car because you couldn't see because the snow is blowing, then you drove too fast for conditions. So you contrast that to the picture on the upper right, where the snow is a little bit firmer. Maybe the truck's going a little bit slower. So that driver has way more visibility. And ultimately, that driver on the right appears to be driving to the conditions, maintaining visibility, control. They can see things that they have to react to and so on. The photo on the bottom happened on the South Shore, either last winter or the winter before, South Shore of Massachusetts. And this one is probably the worst case scenario anybody could ever be in. The driver lost control, did not drive defensively, and it's hard to see in the photo, but they actually broke the telephone pole. You can see it resting behind the vehicle. The point of impact was right behind the driver's door. And if that power line is energized and is hitting the truck and arcing, it's the most dangerous situation you could ever be in. And if we were in class, I would ask people, is that truck grounded? Like your home is grounded? And the answer is no, that truck is not grounded. it's being insulated by the tires right now. In that photo right now, that truck is being insulated. But if there's current flowing through the body of that truck, it's commonly called a Faraday chamber, just like an airplane. Airplanes get struck by lightning all the time. So that truck will tolerate current flowing through the body of that truck for a while, not forever. And if the driver tries to get out of that truck with current flowing through it, and they open the door and step out, they will be electrocuted. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Um, so someone just wrote, what if the plow is on the ground? That's a bad situation too, because then current would be flowing from the truck through the plow to the ground. So if the driver stepped out near the plow, they would also be electrocuted because the current doesn't just go straight down into the ground 8 feet away from you. You have no idea where it's going. So you want to stay in that vehicle as long as you can. You don't want to touch the windows, the door. You want to sit in your seat, get your cell phone, and call for help. If your tires start popping, that's a bad situation because, again, your vehicle's going to go to ground. And the way that I've been taught by the power company to get out of this vehicle, and I hope nobody ever has to do it, you have to push the door open without touching any of the metal parts. You have to turn in your seat and you have to push your body out of the vehicle and land without touching any of the vehicle. I would ask, if we were in a class together, who wants to do that with 2 inches of snow underneath their feet, let alone do it on a dry day? So you stick the landing like a gymnast. Your feet have to land right next to each other. And there's two options to get away from the vehicle safely. One is to shuffle your feet so that your heel, if your left foot goes forward, your heel never passes your toe. And then your right foot would shuffle past your left foot so that your right heel never passes your left toe. And they tell you to shuffle like 200 feet or more away from the vehicle. And I could tell you, if it was me, I would probably shuffle a mile away before I took that next step. The minute you take a step, if you're too close to where that power is going into the ground, you become a circuit and you would be electrocuted. Right? So that was a lot in a short time without being in front of you in person to kind of demonstrate this stuff. The other option, and I got called out on this the other day because I used this photo just this week at another account. The gentleman had been told to hop, and he was much older than myself, which not very young. And I said to him, "Are you going to hop in snow? I'm not going to hop in snow because what if my feet slide out from underneath me when I hop?" So the idea is both feet, you would push off, jump up in the air, and land both feet. Not the best option on a snow-covered road, but it is another way you can get away from an energized vehicle. So Andy, did you find anything on that online, on that vehicle? No?
Sorry, I was muted.
Sorry. So did you, I know you looked into that picture. I don't know if you were able to find anything more.
I wasn't able to find anything on it whatsoever, but I can honestly say I looked for about 5 minutes because it was later in the day and I'm like, I'm good.
So I didn't catch the person's name who said if the plow was down on the ground, would it be grounded? That was a great question. And the way grounding works is you have to have a wire connecting. There would have to be a wire from the body of the truck to the plow down to a metal rod to a metal plate in the ground in order for it to be grounded. But it was a good question. All right, so this is always a fun topic because people are sometimes very divided about whether seatbelts work or don't work. And I think you could make a strong argument that back in the 50s and 60s, there might have been times where it might have been in a low speed crash, it might have been better to be ejected from the vehicle because our vehicles back in the 50s and 60s had solid steel dashboards that came to points and there were no crumple zones, and some of the cars didn't even have safety glass. So you could almost make a point that it might be better in a low speed crash, but Anything over 35 miles an hour and you're ejected from the vehicle, the trauma to the human body is catastrophic. Um, in the state of New Hampshire in 2018, there were 152 fatal crashes in New Hampshire. It was one of the worst years the state of New Hampshire's ever had. The majority, 90% of those vehicles, those fatal crashes were single car crashes. No other vehicle was involved. Speed was a factor in all of them. And 75% of the people who died were not wearing a seatbelt. So had they worn a seatbelt, they probably would be alive. Just this week, over in Seabrook, you can Google this if you don't believe me, a Hampton woman was killed Tuesday afternoon when she was thrown from her SUV in a rollover in Seabrook. The photo shows a residential road. It looks like anything around Laconia, Belmont, Franklin. The speed limit on that road is probably posted at 35 miles an hour. She was driving a 2019 Hyundai Tucson. That's a good car. That's got side airbags, probably traction control, side encroachment warning systems. It's a 2019. She was only 35 years old. That's way too young to die. Um, so in New Hampshire, you guys are driving on the roads that these fatal crashes happen on. They're not always on 93 or 89. They're all over our secondary roads. And it all comes from driving too fast, speeding, driving too fast for conditions, and not wearing your seatbelt. Um, I know I've said this before, but in the state of New Hampshire, the law says in your own personal vehicle, if you're 18 years or older, you don't need it. The second you go to work and you're in a work vehicle, there are multiple agencies that require it. First off, your company requires it. It's the company policy. Second, it's a DOT rule, whether it's a DOT sanctioned vehicle or controlled vehicle. Third, it's the New Hampshire Department of Labor law. Fourth, it's an OSHA standard. So there's four agencies, for lack of a better word, that require you to wear your seatbelt when you're at work. Um, and Angie found a great photo, scary photo of people being ejected.
So I actually watched this video. So if you go on YouTube and look up no seatbelt crash ejections, you will find multiple videos where you can actually see human beings being thrown from a vehicle. This was probably the most gut-wrenching video I've ever seen of people being thrown from a vehicle. The car is going at it, and you can actually see these people go under the car.
Oh,
It is horrific.
yeah.
So we can't say it enough. Seatbelts save lives. There's also a video out there called Room to Live.
Yeah.
It will show you multiple crash vehicles where if you sit in the driver's seat, there was plenty of room where that person could have lived if they had had their seatbelt on.
So, oh, God, that's fine. Yeah. So here's another one. Again, very disturbing. So that in this slide, that person is up. They're up in the air. They're up in the air 3 or 4, probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 stories up in the air. And if the building, Belknap, garage building was 3 or 4 stories high, and we were there for a meeting, I guarantee none of you would volunteer to jump off that roof. Because it could be fatal. You could break your neck, be a quadriplegic, or just simply die from your impact injuries. So why would anybody want to be thrown from a vehicle that's doing 35 to 65 miles an hour? You've got that speed involved in the crash, and then you've got the height and the forces of gravity acting on you to bring you back down to earth. And then, as Angie pointed out in the last slide, you may be run over by the vehicles behind you because they may not even see you. So it's just not a survivable outcome. So our goal here is we don't want to be a crash statistic. We don't want to be you don't want to be one of the 152 people in the state of New Hampshire. I certainly don't want to hear about any of you being involved in a harmful crash. And I keep calling them crashes or collisions. They're not accidents. We know that we need to slow down. We know that we need to increase our following distances. We know we need to wear a seatbelt. It's the law when we work. It's your company policy, um, and we just don't want anyone getting hurt. Um, if you've got a passenger, a coworker in your vehicle, and you're traveling summertime, wintertime, or whatever, don't even move that truck until that seatbelt is buckled. It sends a message that you're serious to the passenger. And by the way, even though you're driving for Belknap, you are personally responsible for your passenger's safety. So if you get involved in a crash and they're thrown from the vehicle, do you want to tell their loved ones, I didn't make him wear my seatbelt, his seatbelt? Do you want to have that conversation? They can take you to court. In the state of New Hampshire, we have a vehicular homicide law. It doesn't matter your intent. You blow through a stop sign because you can't see it because it's buried in snow and you T-bone a vehicle and someone dies, the state of New Hampshire will prosecute you and put you in prison. It happens every year. It doesn't matter your intent. The same could be true for not making your passenger wear a seatbelt. That might be the only thing you did wrong, and you did it unwillingly or not, or you know what I mean, not purposefully. So my advice, and this is the advice my family practices, our vehicle does not go into gear until everyone is seatbelted. That's in our own driveway, let alone in a mall parking lot or anywhere else. So don't be a statistic. Don't get in a position where you've got to have that conversation with coworkers or a family member about why you were involved in a crash and your coworker was ejected from the vehicle. It just is not a fun, pleasant thing to have to live through. So I'm good for the next slide.
So Jeff,
Kind of,
Jeff, we've got about 10 minutes.
okay.
And
I'm not,
I also need to do a quick COVID update for people. So we're gonna have to fly through this portion of it.
okay. So when it comes to weather, cold weather, we're always concerned about frostbite. Here are some of the signs. I think Angie can probably post these later, so I don't have to go through them really quick. At best case scenario, it takes 30 minutes, but it can take less than that to get frostbite. And real quick, here's the tricky thing. When you start to feel cold on your face, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, I don't, geez, I must have moved it. I'm warming up. Well, are you really warmed up, or do you already have frostbite? It happens that fast. So if you're out there on a windy day and you've got one of those things you pull over your head, and you've got some cheekbone exposed and it's windy and you're starting to feel that numbness, pull that up further before you get frostbite. So go ahead. Here's a graphic representation of what it looks like. It does turn black, basically becomes super dehydrated, and it turns black pretty quickly. I've only had the occasion to have 2 small spots on my face, but I was shocked at how short. It probably took about 7 minutes for me to get it.
Wow.
Go ahead. It was super windy the day that it happened to me, and the temperature was about 0 before the wind. So if you're out there, shoveling, removing snow, and somehow your clothing gets wet, that's where the spare clothes come into place. You don't want any wet clothing touching your body because it's going to, promote frostbite. If you suspect somebody has it, get them into a warm vehicle, wrap them up in blankets. If they've got wet clothing, let them get out of that wet clothing and put dry clothing on. I really don't like this part about, warming people up with water. You got to be really, really careful. You don't use hot water, you use warm water, but I think we're going to leave that really for the professionals at a hospital or an emergency room. Same thing about, putting somebody near a wood stove. Their skin is numb. They're not going to feel it. So, be really careful. Face creams and sunblock and stuff like that won't prevent frostbite. I can tell you, I put sunblock on in the wintertime if it's a sunny day, cold sunny day, because I get sunburned and windburned, and it helps a little bit with that, but it won't stop frostbite. I'm good for the next one. We want to dress in layers. We want to use wicking clothes, not cotton. That first layer should be like one of those synthetic wools or synthetic nylons that's going to pull sweat away from your body and keep you warm. The clothing that's out there today has really come a long way. If you go to, Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that, you'll find this type of clothing. Again, bring a spare set. Cotton socks are not good because they just soak up the sweat and they stay wet. They don't dry. Anything with a wool blend, merino wool, like 85% really works good. So you want, that wicking layer, then a wool or fleece layer, and then a Gore-Tex windproof layer for the outer side to stay dry. Hydration is so important any time of the year. The winter is really, really dry. That storm we had was wet, but as soon as that storm was over, the relative humidity outside was probably somewhere down around 15%. And humans want 35 to 55%. When you're out there plowing in the trucks and you got the defroster on all the time, your body is burning through water at an alarming rate. And water is what's going to hydrate you. Alcohol doesn't. It doesn't warm the body either. Soda and sports drinks don't really hydrate you too much. Coffee isn't really a great hydrator either. So keep pounding that water. I'm good. Fitness for work. Again, you got to look at those storms. You got to plan ahead. You got to be rested. We're all adults now. We need you to do the job. You have no idea that the impact plowing has on society. You could be, if you're late, someone could show up for work early and you didn't plow their facility correctly, or you didn't get there and they slip and fall. They could have a head injury, a neck injury, or something. So it's so important to be doing what you do. You need to be sober, fed, feeling good, not sick, dressed correctly in those layers, boots, not shorts and sandals or sneakers. So, be grown ups. Let's be rested, ready for work. So wrapping this up, whenever the conditions change, we're going to slow down. We're going to drive slower. We're going to use that 4-second distance or more. We're going to wear our seatbelts, dress in layers, hydrate. Pay attention for the signs of frostbite. Again, if you leave for work late, you will be late. So you need to follow these rules to have a good, successful season. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. And wishing you the best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this. And if you guys, as always, if there's any additional questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and I can forward them on to Jeff and get those answers for you. I am going to ask that you stay on just for a couple more minutes because we do have some quick COVID updates for you. But thank you, Jeff, for everything. And
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it. So
Awesome.
I'm going to stop sharing this one and start sharing a new one. Let's see. All right. So quick COVID update. At this time, we just went through a really rough period of people traveling outside of New England. We had a lot of people who were quarantined for 2 weeks. Because of that, we will no longer be approving time off that requires an employee to quarantine upon return. So it puts an unnecessary strain on scheduling and production this time of year. Masks. So far, we've had 3 vehicles seen where 2 employees are in the vehicle and people were not wearing their masks. We will no longer tolerate this. So it's important that you have them on at all times if there's more than 2 people in the vehicle. This means that if you're taking a break, you cannot have the person with you taking a break with you if you're both eating inside the vehicle, because that requires your mask to be off. You need to schedule separate break times for each individual on the team where they can go sit in the vehicle, have their lunch, get out, and then the next person can go in, have their lunch, and get out. And then after all the lunches are done, we need to sanitize the vehicle. We will start coaching processes at this point. We've said this enough. And, again, I'm going to say it again, and I don't mean to be a jerk, but if you do not want to follow our policies with this, you do not need to come to work. Just send me an email, give me a call, say, you know what? I don't believe in COVID. I think it's stupid and I'm not going to follow your policies. We'll take care of it from there. So I hate to be that strong, but we're done. We don't need to have multiple employees quarantining, shutting down entire job sites, having an entire crew shut down for 2 weeks because people were not following the policies that we have in place. Feel free to contact me if you disagree with this or you don't want to work because of the mask mandate that we have in place right now. Other than that, thank you all for spending an hour with us today. I truly appreciate your time. And we hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much.